Good day. While there are many advantages to using a graphical interface to deploy and support operating systems, in cases where the operating system does not have a graphical user interface, like Server Core 2019, basically there's no desktop experience. We don't use servers generally to browse the web or to do email. We use servers to provide services. So Microsoft has made a serious effort to strip down its server operating system to make it less vulnerable, smaller footprint. There are some trade-offs. Basically, it's harder to manage unless you have graphical user tools like the Windows Admin Center. Once that's configured properly, it's simply a matter of selecting the system and connecting with a suitable login account. So as I connect to my server, even though it doesn't have a graphical user interface, I can use this graphical management tool to systematically, methodically, in a very streamlined fashion, update large numbers of systems. The problem with updates, though, is that they load independently. Oftentimes they load across the internet if we use the normal routine to update. After we install an operating system, we often have to install updates, then updates for the updates, and then updates for the updates for the updates. The idea of slipstreaming is to take those same updates and instead of having to download them in a slow and painful fashion after install, to embed them or inject them into the installation source or media image so that they're already included. We're going to use a tool called DISM, Deployment Imaging Service Manager, and basically we're going to slipstream these updates directly into here so that we don't have to run updates on each machine. One nice thing about this graphical tool is that it'll allow you to take a look at the update history. So if I have a newly installed system and I sort by the update install, you'll notice the very first things that load are security-minded antivirus and anti-malware, but then there's a very large cumulative update. So if you look at the knowledge base reference and then navigate to the Microsoft Update Catalog, you can actually insert the reference into, let's see here, we can actually insert the knowledge base reference KB4601345, and it'll give us a listing of that same critical update. In some cases, a kernel update will be applied to Windows 10 and to the server operating system. But what we're going to look for is the Server 2019 version and then download it separately. Once I have it downloaded separately, I can double click on it and it will tell me it has a self-extracting installer, and it will tell me as it starts to load whether or not it's appropriate for this system or not. The point is that if I collect all of these updates for the server based on the history and then collect them in a folder, I don't have to go on the internet every time. Now you see in this case it says the update is not applicable to your computer, and that's okay. We're just going to click OK, but keep in mind that you can collect the updates in a separate directory and either include them in that directory so that they're easy to access, or slipstream them so that they're loaded automatically. They're already incorporated into the operating system. And then that way, every time you install a new system with this disk to load the operating system, all of these many downloads are already bundled in there. In order to make this easy, what we're going to do is create a link between our host system. To perform the slipstream, I'm going to open the slipstream command examples text file in Notepad. So I'm basically just going to enter my command to enter Notepad, and I'll navigate to the temp folder and open my file. And so at this point I can basically copy and paste the commands. The first thing I want to do is to mount the ISO in PowerShell. I have to mount it to create a drive letter, and then I'm going to copy the contents into a temporary offline directory. Then I'm going to use DISM to get the Windows install management file, the WIM file, and then mount that. And then at some point further down, after some additional DISM commands, I'm going to apply the file, actually the MSU file, to the offline ISO image, and I'm going to unmount right back to the ISO with what we call an updated ISO, and then dismount my original ISO. That'll give me a new ISO that's been updated with the bundle of updates that I need. So at this point, we'll go ahead and mount the disk image. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this command. I'll Control C and then click into my screen here, shift into PowerShell, and then use my right mouse button to enter the command. And at some point we should see that we have a drive letter D or a drive letter E. So I can basically enter this or E, and I have a drive letter E. If I pull a directory, I see the contents on the inside of my ISO. That's what we want. I'm going to come back into the C drive and reference my, let's see, I use Alt-Tab to go back to my Notepad. So it's sitting on drive letter E, and what I'm interested in particular is taking the install WIM file from the sources directory. So if I look at my sources directory on the image, inside there's an install.wim file, and I'm going to mount it into a temporary offline directory. So I can use that as a workspace to inject my updates. So at this point, I'm going to make a directory called srv image. That's where I'm going to put the ISO image, the install WIM image, temporarily, and create an offline directory. So at this point, I'm going to drop out of PowerShell, and I'm going to go back to my root directory and create a directory called srv-mig, server image. If I pull a directory, you can see that I have my srv-img directory now. I want to copy the contents of my E drive, the ISO I just mounted, which is basically a digital disk. It's like sticking a plastic disk in the drive, and I want to empty its contents inside here. So I'm going to use the xcopy command again, only this time I'm going to take everything from my E drive. So I'm going to navigate to the E drive, and then I'm going to use xcopy to copy everything into my srv image, and I'm going to use the switches for /E and /H to make sure that even, well, everything and hidden directories are also copied in there. So I'll go back to E drive, use the xcopy command, I'm going to copy everything into my SRV image directory, including empty and hidden. And you see, this is going to take a while, but basically the largest file to load would be the install.wim. So it's the install.wim file that'll take the longest to copy, because that's really where the installation media or source code for the operating system is located, inside the ISO disk image. We're going to pause this and let it run its course. So my Xcopy has finished. If I go back to my C drive, and I go into my server image directory, what I should see is a mirror image, a copy, right, of the same thing that I see when I'm inside the E drive. And I do. When I look at this, I see the same set of files in the same directories. So what have we just done? We've taken the ISO digital disk image, we've mounted it, and we've emptied the contents into a directory we're calling srv-img. And then we're going to add an extra directory inside the C drive. So we're done with our E. We'll get back to that, and at the very end we'll dismount it. But I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to create a directory called, what is it called? It's called offline. And once I've created the offline directory inside my image, now I have something for DISM to operate with. So that's what I'm going to do last, and this will end part 1 of our Slipstream method. Go ahead as soon as this is finished and load part 2. So I'll make directory offline. I'm already in the SRV image, so this is going to create an offline directory here. You'll see it listed right here as soon as I'm finished. Offline. Now if I repeat the command for the directory, now I see, in addition to these directories, EFI, boot, sources, and support, I have boot, EFI, offline, sources, and support. This is where we'll pause.